Hello and welcome to my very first devlog. Bear with me as this is my first time doing anything like this. If you happen to be a random person that stumbles along this, welcome. For those I've shared this to, also welcome. But let's go ahead and get started. So this is kind of my debut into devlogs and just recording my progress, playing around with random things. I have used Game Maker for a few years here and there, so I'm semi familiar with it. Um, I decided to again create these videos to kind of archive my progress. So for this one, we are going to be creating Pong, but vertically, because I did forget that Pong was a horizontally played game. Um, Nonetheless, what I'm starting out with here is creating my objects and sprites that I know I will need. Um, if you do find yourself thinking, wow, he could have done this differently, here's my opinion, or hey, he did this really wrong, here's the correct way, I welcome that feedback. Feel free to throw a comment or reach out to me in my Discord, which I should be linking to the channel and video descriptions, and I'm more than willing to discuss. Again, this is my journey into game development, and I'm all for improving and trying new things that might be better. As you can see, I am just sitting here setting up the sprites now. I did realize that I could have just had one sprite for both the player and enemy paddle, as well as possibly merging those two objects together uh, in in the form of a parent object. But again, it's a learning process. I'm somewhat familiar with the GameMaker software, but in terms of optimal ways to do things, still learning. Um, while this is going, uh, I do want to say these devlog videos should only be around always the 30-minute mark because I give myself an hour to record and play with things in a recorded sense that I will post. I might go back and correct things or refine or research on my own time outside of recording because nobody wants to sit and stare at a blank screen. I try to do my best to pause and play so it automatically cuts out any times where I'm just sitting still and not doing anything, but try my best. Um, so I just placed the objects in the room there, just setting everything up, set the room size. Um, let's see here. Looks like now I am setting up the collision, which would be the walls for the bullet to bounce off of. For now, they're uneven. I think. Let's see. What is my brain wanting to do here? Oh, I see. Just so that way I can visually see it in the room and test it. You might see a pause here for a second. Yep. If you saw, I tried to test the game, but then you guys didn't see anything, so I had to go into OBS and create another window capture so that would actually pop up. So you guys can see visually what I'm messing with. Looks like for here, I definitely started out with just messing with the vertical speed and horizontal speed. A lot of sources online do say to mess with the direction instead, which I did ultimately end up doing. But if anybody has any comments on why you mess with direction instead, mainly because with direction, I in my brain, I wanted to be able to move every which way, which wasn't working, like the bullet to bounce around in any kind of angle, which visually was looking a little wonky. That could just be because of the smaller sprite size. But I've got no clue. Something I'd have to look into more. But online sources mainly said direction. I just couldn't find a visual that confirmed why it was better. But again, starting with the H speed here, or horizontal speed, testing that out. Right now, setting up the player controls so that, or player variables, so that when you press A and D, that is mapped to moving left and right. And then I set up the movement according to self. Falling a little bit behind here. Again, this is the first time I'm ever trying to live commentate my own recordings, because this is a voiceover. Clearly, I'm not doing all of this live at the moment at the same time I'm talking. That would be a lot. Um, so let's see here. It looks like we are starting to set up the enemy. Another couple pauses, a highlighting and deleting of the description twice. That was interesting. I think here I'm just trying to come up with the enemy paddle's reaction to the bullet, so that way it actually moves and acts like an AI. Again, just playing with the horizontal speeds, setting it to where if the bullet is on the right side of the room, it moves right, and if the bullet is on the left side of the room, the enemy paddle moves left. Played around with the speeds a little bit here. Now, actually, now that I'm looking at it, it doesn't look like it's actually recording the gameplay of the window, which is kind of awkward. I'm not gonna lie. It's not, there's no movement. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll scrap that idea for now. Hey, we're here. It's the first time, you know. We're still gonna let it run. This is still gonna be the first devlog, but I'm gonna have to take a look at OBS and figure out why it wasn't recording the actual gameplay, but just a still image. Huh. Anyway, through that testing, the everything moves around and semi works. So it looks like I was setting up here the once it moves outside of the room, um, based on whether it moves out the top of the room or the bottom, it will kind of check to see if I won or lost. So, of course, enemies at the top of the room. So if it goes behind the enemy paddle outside the room, it will count as a win. And if it goes behind my paddle or the player's paddle outside the bottom of the room, it will count as a loss. Um, Creating a new object here, which is just kind of like the game controller object that houses some variables that would needed that bleh, I need to have kind of overarching the whole project. So tracking your win status, I throw some other ones in there a little bit later that I'll talk about. Setting up a draw event to tell you if you win or lost, because a bullet simply just going out the top or bottom of the screen and nothing happening, it's not really a game. There's no feedback. Kind of need to tell people if they won or lost. So setting it so that the draw text is aligned in the center, similar to how if you're writing an essay, you align it to the left, maybe your title to the center, body to the left. Setting it so that way it draws directly in the middle of the room. I believe it or not, I used to hard code these things. I would create an object, put it in the middle of the room, and then look at the coordinates of it and just hard code it a long time ago. Turns out you shouldn't do that, because if you mess with the room size, it won't be in the middle anymore. And it's just a little bit more efficient to do it this way. There's as you watch this, if you are paying attention to the code being written, you will notice a lot of mistakes. You might yell at your screen. Hopefully, ideally, I went back and corrected them. But as somebody that is new to all of this, if it works, it works, even if it looks busted in the code. I do try my best to follow best practices. Like, I should be commenting what everything does. I think I only do that like 30% of the time. Sometimes you'll see me comment the code, sometimes you won't. It's a habit that I'm trying to build for readability, especially if I start working with others on projects. So here I am still just trying to figure out the draw text, which off the top of my head while I'm live commenting this, I don't exactly remember. I'm doing this a day after, because I was too nervous to do a voiceover while people were home for my first time. So I kind of have already forgotten the hurdles that I was up against, aside from using horizontal and vertical speed versus direction and just general speed. So bear with me if my commentating isn't the most informed, because kind of just forgot. Little bit about me. I went to I graduated high school, went to college, got a bachelor's in veterinary science. But I did take about 2 years of computer science and engineering. I've had a variety of different jobs ever since leaving college, but I've always had a love for three things. And honestly, that is uh, creating things that pop into my head. I'd like to think that I'm a relatively creative person. And it always feels good to create something that has been stuck in my head, and I'm like, man, I wish that was real. So whether that be creating some really bad music using FL Studio, game making, something I've always struggled with is art. I wish I was good enough at art to kind of draw whatever I am thinking. And working on that. That is part of the game development. So you guys should, from time to time, see some development videos on music and art. Because I can't just be using white and black boxes forever. That aesthetic only pleases people up into a certain point, and that includes me. So here, just kind of testing the game overall now. Let's see here. Yes. At the start, I believe I was trying to add some influence to the bullet. So let's say the bullet is going left. I ideally, if I am moving the paddle to the left, it would continue to bounce to the left. Maybe one day we'll consider like adding more speed to it, because if I'm moving left and the bullet's moving left and it bounces off the paddle, um, maybe we can add some more speed, so that way the skill ceiling for the game can go up. But for this one, it is if the bullet is moving to the left, but my paddle is moving to the right, it simply just changes the direction to go right. Um, Again, the OBS is bugged, so you're just getting still images. Uh, did not notice that at the time of recording, so I apologize on that front. Will be fixed next time. Here, I'm playing with the speeds mostly because I noticed if everything is going at the speed of 3, it is impossible to win against the enemy paddle. It will always just bounce off the center area of the enemy paddle, no matter if I change the direction or anything, just because it's re you can't see it, but it's reacting instantly, and it moves at the same horizontal speed that the bullet does. So technically, it would be impossible to win, and I'd say impossible to lose. But at that game, it's a war of attrition. Uh, Either you get bored or you somehow mess up and you don't hit the bullet. So no possible way of winning. So here I am trying to. Okay, I think I'm back. That was rude. My headset apparently times out because I don't have any audio. Um, oh man, this is a learning process. This will be a fun video to go back to if I manage to actually stick with this. So what I'm gonna do now is go put Spotify on like one volume, so that way my headset doesn't turn off while I'm talking. So uh Spotify. There we go. Now it shouldn't turn off. All right, apologies for the silence. Again, here, now I'm acting, or now I added at what position in the room for the bullet. Uh, sorry. I have added the enemy paddle to check the position, or the Y position of the bullet in the room, and then react at a certain point. So there's a little pause here. It's just me testing. Uh, Again, upsetting that it's just a still image. So right now, once the bullet is on the enemy's half of the room, it will react and move accordingly to catch the bullet. What I realized with that is even when it's halfway reacting, um, you still can't win against it, and you're just bouncing off the middle. But having it at the 1/4 section, so if you are looking from top to bottom, the first 25% of the room vertically is the checking zone. So the enemy paddle will only move once the bullet is in there. Now, there's probably some smoother ways to do this that I am not aware of, in terms of making it seem like an actual AI instead of just it reacting once it goes into a certain area. Because the paddle will just stop. Any smart player would move their paddle maybe back to the center of the room by default, or just your average player would move the paddle back to the center of their room, so you have ample time to react. There, I was pretty much done testing the collisions, so I moved the collision object outside of the room so you don't see it anymore, and then just kind of centered everything by changing the snap to grid. And here begins the confusion of direction versus using V speed and H speed. This goes on for quite a bit here. Again, a lot of information I was looking up online was always talking about direction instead of the H speed versus V speed. But it took me a little while to figure out why. I mean, I do get it. You can still set the bullet to go at certain directions where it won't look wonky or jittery. But hey, um, what can you do? There, I was putting randomize in the O game because typically it randomizes just like the seeds and the values. So for example, if I set the bullet to randomly shoot out in a 360 direction, if I don't put the randomize, it will not shoot out in a random 360 direction every time the game is loaded. It just continues to uh, go in the same direction it did the last time. So if you put the randomize, um, it'll shoot out in a random direction and kind of change up the variability of gameplay. Um, what I'm doing now with whatever this speed is not equal to 3, increase the speed. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was trying to stop, uh, or I was trying to make it so the speed of the bullet vertically would still move at a stat like a whole number, or 3, or fix its jittering issue. I couldn't really tell you, but I wanted it to just always go back to 3, and I was thinking in terms of H speed, V speed, but I was using direction. So um, clearly the H speed and V speed is going to be a little is I don't know if that's how it works, but in my brain, I'm like, if you're using directions, your H speed, V speed might be fractional or something like that. So it might be like 2.3 or something like that, depending on what direction it's moving, even though its speed is 3. So I was trying to solve that issue because it was making the bullet heavily jitter. Um, see here. So again, a lot of testing was with the direction and speed versus using H speed and V speed. That was probably the biggest contender for this first hour. A lot of testing that. Don't know why I changed that back to half the room. Couldn't tell you. Might be running out of things to talk about here, but again, I do want to make these 30 minutes just to showcase what I did for archiving sake for any insane individual that, wants to audit what I'm doing and be like, bruh, you are kind of bad. Or be like, hey, not bad learning. I like the things you're questioning and the things you're testing. I welcome all of it, to be honest. It is just me. I am 100% self-taught. I haven't taken any classes aside from, college computer science and engineering. I had a good idea of what coding looks like, so I'm comfortable with a lot of those environments. I might not be like your most expert coder who can come up with like the best things on the spot and off the dome, but I mean, show me two or three times, a certain function or a way something is done, and I can usually handle it pretty well. I'd say the only thing in terms of game maker that I have always struggled with is creating like the perfect collision code, which I need to take the time to do, and I just need to copy it and like paste it to a Word doc, and then just all games going forward, I just grab that code and edit it to my liking. Because doing the collision code off the dome, I don't think I've ever been able to do. I know there's a function you can use, place meeting, specify an object, and if it collides with that object, you can tell it what to do, which is what you use, but the conditions and all of that is where it all falls downhill. So, still playing with the speed and direction here. I will say after this offline, I researched it and I have something that actually works. There's some quote unquote bugs here and there, inconsistencies where the game is currently at, but honestly, 99% of the time, you could play it normally. Um, so again, just kind of figuring out why and what the differences are. That was probably my biggest thing, is if it is better, um, figuring out why, how it looks visually, how it interacts with the game and the objects. Um, that was typically the harder thing to find online because it was like use direction. This is the better one, but like, why is it better? And can I visually see how it's better? Um, this here is kind of just going off the dome on how to have the bullet collide with the paddles without, getting stuck in the paddle and doing some wonk stuff. Like I said, 99% of the time where the game's at now, it's fine, but you'll see some quote unquote bugs where the ball will freak out depending on if you squish it against the walls, or if you hit it on the corner of the paddle or it hits the side of the paddle. Um, so just playing around, seeing what I could do with that. Here, I believe I was trying to read the left and the right. Um, again, I kept doing things as if it was horizontal Pong, but I was doing vertical Pong, so that was also trippy, especially when Googling and researching things um, about the coding of Pong. I started to kind of get it, but again, most of this is just testing. So I'll still continue to let this play. It really sucks that we don't have the video. That move outside solid for sure I thought was going to be hype, but then I realized it is only for objects that are marked as solid. So if you see there on the object O bullet, that little window that gives its brief details, there's solid. If you click that, there's a whole built-in function with Game Maker where you can do collisions that way, and use it for some other purposes, I believe. I'm not an expert on Game Maker by any means. But given my years of dabbling here and there, it's never been something that people have advised to use. So I just kind of avoid it like it's the plague because it doesn't seem to get used anywhere. Um, Maybe it's really cool. Maybe it makes things easier. Um, could be awesome, but it has limitations versus um, coding something similar yourself. Uh, no clue. So now I am just adding some menuing or just basic things to add replayability without restarting the game entirely. So having the game active state is when the bullet is on screen, and when it's not active, um, you're able to create the bullet and start a new game. So making that bound to space, you press space, game becomes active, summons a bullet, you can play. Once you win or lose, game becomes inactive, and you can then press space again to play. So setting up that code and making sure that the draw event for the you win, you lose doesn't just stay on screen, it gets removed when you restart the game, and making sure that bullet spawns, because without it, you can't really play anything. I do believe that if it didn't happen already, there were points where I had to go into the O enemy and um, make it so that way the enemy object wasn't playing or alive unless the bullet was there. Because if the bullet gets destroyed, it might just go off one direction, or the game would be very unhappy if it needs to be the bullet there to follow it. Um, so I believe I put like if instance exists, then it will run its code to essentially play against the player. Um, so here I started. Yes, here we go. Incorporating the game active for the draw event. Let's see, what was I doing here? Now I think I could have done a switch statement here instead of a bunch of if else statements. But I was like, run it. It's only three. If this causes if this is so inefficient that the game's running at one frame, then I'll change it. I do need to develop the habits regardless of what I'm doing. I think it'd be better off to use a switch statement here. But hey, look, that's like the best feedback you've gotten ever. I start the game and you can see that it says press space to start. That's like there we go. Hey, it did work out a little bit. The OBS recording did work out. You're getting that live feed. Oh look, it's not there anymore. So weird. Don't know why I did that. Anyway, looks like we're coming on a wrap up. Sorry to stop abruptly. I should have been looking at the timer. That's my fault. Again, this is my game development journey, and I hope that some of you will continue. Sorry. I hope that anybody that comes across this, or through any means, whether it would I know you or through other social medias that I'm posting on, continue to watch me grow. Again, all feedback is welcome. I got pretty thick skin, so even if you want to tell me I'm terrible, uh, that works for me. But ideally, you tell me why I'm terrible and like how I can do it better. I'd like that too. So again, this is Wailnewt. This was my first dev blog ever, despite how lame it turned out recording wise. Hey, we'll improve. All right. Once again, thank you everybody for watching, Look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a good one. Wailnewt out.